Police and protesters have clashed in North London after several people were arrested as part of a counter-terrorism investigation. 5 men and 2 women, aged between 23 and 62, were arrested after an investigation into suspected activity linked to the banned Kurdistan Workers Party, known as the PKK. The PKK, a militant group founded in southeast Turkey in 1978 with the aim of creating an independent Kurdish state, was banned in Britain in 2001. The group has been involved in a 40-year conflict, leading to more than 40,000 deaths. British police say they were carrying out searches at 8 premises across London, including the Kurdish Community Centre in Haringey, which is likely to be closed for the next 2 weeks. Protesters gathered near the community centre following the first 6 arrests, and additional officers were subsequently deployed to the area, the Met reported. 4 people at the protests were arrested, but the arrests were not directly connected to the counter-terrorism probe, it said. Acting Commander Helen Flanagan, from the Met's Counter-Terrorism Command, said, "I want to stress that today's arrests are targeted specifically at those we believe may be involved in suspected terrorist activity. We understand that these arrests have caused some concern amongst certain local communities, particularly those in the Kurdish community. I want to reassure the community that our activity is being carried out to keep everyone safe from potential harm, including those within the Kurdish community itself. I would also ask that people avoid speculating or sharing unverified details online about this activity." Ishak Milani of the Kurdish People's Assembly in the UK said earlier today, "The Kurdish community in London strongly condemned the recent unjust and heavy-handed raid conducted by British police on our community spaces. This aggressive act is not only an attack on our people, but also an affront to the principles of democracy, justice and human rights that the UK claims to uphold. We demand accountability for this raid and a clear explanation for the actions taken." One nearby resident, who requested to remain anonymous, has said he saw streams of armed officers detaining the individuals earlier today. They told the Mail Online, "I got up in the morning at 3 a.m. to go downstairs and make a sandwich, but when I went to look out of the kitchen window, I could see movement outside, looking onto Portland Gardens, and I could see 2 streams of armed officers walking away from where the Kurdish centre was. Roughly guessing, I could see at least 60 officers. It was insane. I could see armoured police trucks and police armed with weapons, the one you would associate with anti-terrorism. Additional local officers will be carrying out patrols, and there will be an increased police presence in the area over the coming days, with officers available to speak with any members of the public who may be concerned." The arrests come as calls grow for the deportation of foreign nationals linked to terrorism who are filling up Britain's prison space. GB News' Patrick Christie's revealed stats that show almost 3/4 of people in Britain have said they're in favour of deporting such people.
Get foreign nationals in Britain who support terrorism on the first plane out of here. And if the Human Rights Brigade want to block that plane on the tarmac, well, they can get gone as well. Why is that controversial? Why? Here's the latest data released today. Nearly 3/4 of people think that foreign nationals who glorify Islamist terrorism should be deported from the UK. That is an overwhelming majority of people. The controversial view should be keeping them here. The controversial view should be trying to help bring them back to Britain, like in the case of Shamima Begum. In fact, when you really look at the numbers, 74% of people agreed that foreign terror supporters should be removed from the UK. 4% disagreed, and 22% said they did not know. So just 4% would keep them here. I'm sure plenty of you listening to this now are thinking that perhaps they should have their hard drives checked, and you would not be alone in thinking that. But before the usual types on social media start banging on at me about how this is some kind of hard right, far right issue and we're all a bunch of frothing racist Nazis, the data shows that 70% of Labour voters would deport them and 73% of Remainers. So there you go. That's a heck of a lot of far right bigots, isn't it? This is the prime example of our politicians needing to get out more. It is the overwhelming majority view of people right across the political spectrum that if you support a foreign terror group, you should be deported. We should do some kind of mass public lie detector test, or probably just ask people, actually. I'm sure plenty of them would openly tell you. And if it turns out that they have sympathy for the Taliban, which a lot of people apparently helping with our counter-terrorism prevent scheme do, or Al-Qaeda or ISIS or Hamas or anyone like that, then they're on the first plane out of here. Of course, by this logic, there is the chance that we may have had to deport the former Labour leader, but that wouldn't have been the end of the world, would it? We could at least do it with channel migrants if they are coming from countries where terror groups are prominent. We need to know, and we need to get them out of here. The reality is that there are a very fringe group of about 4% of people in Britain that one would imagine the majority of them are either hardcore charity activists, lawyers, or an actual terror group sympathisers themselves, and they make a lot of noise. They're big on social media, OK? They seem like there's millions of them out there. But there isn't. There really isn't. Just ignore them and do what's in the best interest of Britain. This idea politicians have that they couldn't possibly start deporting more people because there'd be outrage. Yeah, there would be, amongst a small group of idiots who are probably very angry about life in general anyway. Just ignore them. Move on. It should absolutely not be controversial to get Islamist terrorists out of Britain and do more to stop them coming in. If they like those groups so much, OK, I personally would be happy to pay for their flight ticket to wherever their jihadi mates live.
Reacting to the clash between police and Kurdish community protesters, Dr. Renee Hoenderkamp said the matter speaks to the fact that communities in Britain are not well integrated.
Some members of the PKK, or suspected members, it's a Kurdistan terror sort of group really, been arrested in London, apparently.
Yeah, so this is in Haringey. It's actually not far from where I work. And I think it actually speaks to the earlier point, which got quite feisty, about integration. And we saw yesterday, after these arrests, that the police did a coordinated raid. They arrested 6 people on terrorism offences. And whilst there is no immediate threat, obviously, of terror in the UK, it still demonstrates that amongst our integrated communities, we have got terror organisations working. And then the community itself came out because they were so distressed about their cultural centre being closed while the police do their investigations, that they were pushing police around yesterday. They were chanting Free Kurdistan on the streets of Haringey. And I think this just speaks to the fact that we are not integrated, and it's very worrying that we have terrorist organisations operating amongst our communities.
James?
I live round the corner from this community centre, and I do think there's a question about integration, but here I think it's much more likely that the Met and the British state have damaged integration. The Kurdish community is extremely well integrated in all up and down Green Lanes, all through Haringey, all around. It's a key part of the community. And lots of the people who live there are refugees because either they've fled political persecution in Turkey, where the Kurds are repressed, or ISIS, who they have been fighting against in northern Syria. What we saw yesterday was these raids, yes, on some suspects, and the police has said there's no imminent threat in the closing down of the community centre. In what the community found how the police operated was heavy-handed, where there were activists who were beaten, who family members of those arrested were thrown out of their homes, and they went to protest the fact that their community centre, which is right at the heart of the community, and other people use it, I've been there several times, it being closed, and there seemed to have been some clashes with the police. So this does show, I think, quite possibly, we don't know all of the details, and it's possible that the police did everything right, but to me it seems on the face of it that this is an example of the state and the police not helping integration and not helping basic community cohesion, which in ordinary times is completely there. The Kurdish community are very well integrated with other communities in the area.
Should we compare that there were people on the video that I've just watched shoving the police quite hard yesterday? If that had been happening in the summer in the riots and they'd have been the far-right protesters, they'd be in prison now a day later. Should we compare the way that we treat this protest on the streets of London to the way that we treated far-right protests in the summer?
I'm sure that we can, and I'm sure any objective analysis of that would not show that the police who have gone and shut down this community centre were acting less harshly against these members of the Kurdish community than against racist rioters.
But they're not in prison yet, are they?
Burning down the hotels. Well, I hope they're not in prison.
Oh.
If they haven't done anything wrong.
There's a man in prison for unfurling a flag near a mosque in the summer riots.
Yeah, you'll be hardly surprised to see that I'm not in favour of all sorts of actions at the...
Unfurling a flag.
I don't know what's on the flag, I don't know the thing, but probably...
It was a St George's flag.
Probably not, then. That sounds absolutely absurd. I'm not here saying that all bits of policing are good. In fact, I'm saying here, quite possibly, I don't know, right? We don't know, we weren't there, but quite possibly, if the police go in heavy-handed with hundreds of officers, with dogs, etc., shutting down a well-used community centre...
That is housing terrorists.
Hold on. You
Alleged.
You have absolutely no idea whether that's the case. It's 6 people suspected are arrested. That's one of the places they closed down. It's used by huge numbers of people in the community. It's a major community institution. And the fact that people come out to protest against that happening, and the fact that other members of the community have been arrested, family members have been turfed out of the home. There's a press conference that the community is giving this afternoon where they say they're going to present evidence of attacks against the community. You can see why, if that happened to your community, you might want to protest about it.
So it's okay to push the police around?
Hold on.